It's incredibly important that we remember who we are, what we believe, and what our values are. Sometimes we forget and we need a memory aid. One of those memory aids is the secret behind when Hashem said to Moshe, "You will not see my face, you will only see my back." Rashi says that's the knot of the tefillin. In the Heilige Seder Betetzelt, this week's parasha tells us, as Moshe Rabbeinu had gebeten beim Eibishten, that Moshe Rabbeinu petitions Hashem to ask him, "Hareini no'es kvodecha, please show me your true glory and presence." And the Eibishter hat him geantwortet, to which the Eibishter responds, "Lo yisuchal lirois ponai goyim, you cannot see my face because nobody can and survive. Instead, v'ra isa es achoira, you will see my behind, ufonai lo yerau, but you will not see my face." Rashi comments on these words, "V'ra isa es achoira," that Hashem says, "You will see my back." On his mephor, she explains what that means as Hereyu kesher shel tefillin, that the Eibishter showed Moshe Rabbeinu the knot at the back of his tefillin. Why is Rashi telling us this? In Rashi's objective is to always explain to us the simplest understanding of the words in the Torah. In which case we have to understand what is is difficult for us to understand in the simple reading of the story. The Eibishter says, "You're not going to see my face, you'll see my back." What about this do we not understand, and how does Rashi explain it to us by saying, well, he was actually referring to the tefillin knot? Because you can't say, well, what bothered Rashi is, how can you talk about the Eibishter's back? It's so disrespectful, it's so inappropriate, it's so incorrect. Because the Eibishter has no form, so you can't talk about the back. While in the Torah, the reason that can't be what's bothering Rashi is because in the Torah, there are many descriptions, some of them very physical, about Hashem. We speak about Hashem's outstretched arm, we speak about Hashem's white beard. And we don't find Rashi taking those metaphors and explaining to us what they actually mean. Rashi doesn't explain to us that because you can't really use these expressions regarding the Eibishter, therefore don't take them at face value. No, the Pirish is kach v'kach. Let's rather explain that just like the back of Hashem is actually the knot of tefillin, he should have explained what the arm of Hashem is and what the beard of Hashem is, etc. The truth is, you don't have to look so far. You could look in this same paragraph. Freer state, the pasuk tells us earlier, "Lo yisuchal lirois es ponai," that the Eibishter says, "You cannot see my face." Rashi does not feel it necessary to explain to us what the metaphoric meaning of the Eibishter's face is, because obviously Hashem does not have a face. So how come that he's comfortable with? But the back of Hashem he has to explain. Must be that Rashi's job does not include explaining the metaphoric references about Hashem in anthropomorphic terms. So then the question is, how come here when it speaks about Hashem's back, Rashi does have to explain it? Question is even stronger. Let's say that this is what's bothering Rashi. How can you describe Hashem's back? Right? So then how does Rashi answer the question? Instead of explaining what it means to refer to Hashem's back, he says that Hashem showed him the knot of his tefillin. Kesher shel tefillin is eicha davar gashmi. A knot of tefillin is also a physical thing. It actually doesn't help the fundamental question over here. And the physical knot of tefillin is here only used as a metaphor to describe the Eibishter's back. So what did we gain from Mazbeh ben Chomish to explain to the 5-year-old that the Eibishter's back does not mean a physical back, because Hashem has no physical form. Instead it means a tefillin knot, which is just as physical. It sounds like we've confused the 5-year-old. In fact, it's actually counterproductive. If we do need to find some kind of a metaphor to put the 5-year-old's mind at ease that there is no physical back of Hashem, is the Moshe from Ponim un ocher by an adam lemata. Well, maybe the best way would have been to say, look at a human. A human has a face, the forward-facing part of the human being, and the back of the human being. Because when you look at a person's face, you can see the greatness of the person's abilities, his ability to see, to hear, etc. Whereas if you look at a person from the back, you don't see the greatness of the person. Sometimes you don't even know when you're looking from the back that you're actually looking at a human being. That would be a sach gringo to verstehen with the mashal von kesher shel tefillin. Surely, if Rashi is trying to resolve how we could be talking about Hashem's back, a human back would have helped the child a lot more than the knot of tefillin. Befrat, as seine disalberteanim verte in moshel und in nimshel, would be the shortest line between the metaphor and what it's supposed to represent, because you're using the same words. Face of Hashem, face of a human being, helps us understand. Back of Hashem, back of a human being, understands it. So why, if Rashi is so perturbed by the fact that we're talking about Hashem's back, is he using what's kind of an abstract way to explain it, the knot of tefillin? And there's something about Rashi's language that we have to analyze. If Rashi is explaining the meaning of achorai, the back, he should have only used the word achorai as the heading of this pasuk, of this commentary. Why does he include the word veroisa that you'll see? He re-emphasizes it when he says, the Eibishter showed Moshe the knot of his tefillin. Surely Rashi is only innovating for us what it means to have Hashem's back. He could have kept it simple. What is the back? The tefillin knot. Why? Showed him the tefillin knot. So the beer and then explanation is, it's obviously not that Rashi is uncomfortable with the fact that we're describing Hashem's back. There's got to be something deeper. Before the Eibishter responds to Moshe's request, please let me see your full glory. The pasuk gives an introduction, which is Vayomer. The Eibishter says, I will, so to speak, bring my whole goodness in front of your face, and I will call out in the name of Hashem before you, and I will show grace or compassion to all of those that I choose to. And then after that, then Hashem says, almost independently, you cannot see my face. So we've got to understand this context. Moshe is asking, I wanted to see your face. How is the Eibishter's response addressing that? Moshe said, says Rashi explains. Rashi explains that what Hashem was telling Moshe is as follows. It's now the appropriate time for you to see actually my manifestation of glory. And it's the extent to which I allow you to see. And the reason I'm doing this, says the Eibush, is because I want to and I need to teach you the order of how a person davens. I'm going to pass my goodness, so to speak, in front of you on the rock. And I will call out, so to speak, as if I'm petitioning Hashem, so that you will know the words that you should use in your davening in order to petition me. And you will see me, says Hashem to Moshe, so to speak, wearing a talis, wrapped in a talis, and calling out with the 13 attributes of mercy. And then, you have a melamedes Yisrael asas ken, you will then teach the Jewish people to do the same thing, to wrap themselves in their talesim, and to call out with the 13 attributes of mercy. Now, after he gets that description that the Eibishter gives to Moshe, then he says, and then Hashem says, but you won't be able to see my face. Rashi says, even at the time that I'm exposing myself to you, I will not permit you to see my face. If that's the case, then we can understand as is nitken bazundazach. The Eibush is saying you won't see my face, you'll only see my back, is not separate from his overall message. It's actually a continuation of the Eibish's message. I will show you my goodness. I will show you how to connect with me. That image that Moshe is going to perceive of the Eibush, so to speak, wrapped in a talis and reading out words, what's going to kind of conclude or solidify that image is you're going to see my back. Okay, so what's going on over here? If that's the case, they are saying I'm going to expose and show you an image. So what does it now mean? You're going to see my back. Seeing as the Eibishter is appearing to Moshe and in the guise of as if he were a chazan leading the community, wrapped in his talis. And when does Moshe get to see the Eibishter, so to speak, once the Eibishter has passed, which is, so to speak, only the Eibishter's back. So what's the Eibishter saying? You're going to see my greatness, see my glory. Where? You're only seeing the back. If somebody is wrapped in a talis and we're seeing them from the back, the talis actually conceals them. So what's the Eibishter saying? I'm going to wrap myself in a talis like a chazan, and then you're going to see my greatness. Where? What? How greatness? We're going to see the Eibishter screened from us. Let's assume for a moment that talesim were mandated to be produced out of some very valuable, precious material, similar to the big day kahuna, which had to be these very beautiful, elaborate garments. Then maybe we could have explained as then seeing that beauty and regal appearance of the Eibishter wrapped in a talis, maybe that would express the Eibishter's greatness. The talis is the chavod l'sifaris, because a talis had it theoretically been, a very beautiful, precious thing. But that's not the fact. There is no rule about a talis as that it has to be made out of expensive materials. In fact, to the contrary. The minig of the Jewish people, which is now mandated, that is mainstream Judaism, as a talis hashatzis fun semer, that the chazan gets up with a simple woolen talis. And especially when you contextualize, let's say in the Gemara, that speaks about two people battling over or arguing over a talis. Or generally speaking, in many places that our Chazal refer to a talis, they're actually referring to a levush, an ordinary garment / cloak, not something spectacular, not something radiant, not something regal. So the question is, how is the Eibishter showing Moshe his greatness by showing him his cloaked back? If them and Fed Rashi, that's what Rashi is addressing. He's not addressing what does it mean to refer to the Eibishter at the back. He's answering how is the Eibishter revealing himself if all we're seeing is the back with a talis over his head. Answers Rashi. The Eibishter's lifting the veil. Meant when Rashi said that the Eibishter was telling Moshe, I want you to see me wrapped in a talis, it's not nur mit talis. There's not only a talis. No, ich mit tefillin. He's wearing tefillin as well at the same time. But even a child knows as amol is ashat mu'utav nor in talis Shabbos and Yom Tov. There are times the chazan leads the community with only a talis, like on Shabbos and Yom Tov, and amol mit talis and tefillin, and during the week with talis and tefillin. Now that we had this imagery of the Eibishter, so to speak, appearing as if he were a chazan wearing a talis and tefillin, now we understand that what out of all of that did Moshe get to see? The knot of the tefillin. Now how does he get to see the knot of the tefillin? The talis is over the head. On the farmers Rashi madgish, and that's why Rashi doesn't just say achorai equals kesher shel tefillin, rather he says her ehu kesher shel tefillin, that the Eibishter showed him the tefillin knot. Because the image of how the Eibishter presented himself to Moshe was as if he was, so to speak, cloaked in his talis. Well, in that case, the tefillin knot is hidden by the talis. So how could Moshe have seen it? Rashi says, because the Eibishter made a conscious choice to expose the kesher shel tefillin. He showed it to him. So to speak, the Eibishter took off the talis over the section that covers the tefillin knot, and he showed Moshe the knot. Okay, so now we understand the technicalities of it and the language that Rashi uses. Question is, what is so special about seeing the Eibishter's tefillin knot, that is the, so to speak, glory of Hashem? Rashi doesn't have to explain that. But a child, even at 5 years old, knows and understands that from what he's seen. You look at the tefillin and the way they're placed on the head, they resemble a crown, which of course is a symbol of regality, of royalty. That's why. What do we call Yukar? Eilu Tefillin, like the pasuk says in Megillah. Yukar, the beauty, the regalness of a person is the Tefillin. That's why Rashi points out that what did the Eibishter metaphorically show Moshe? The knot of the Tefillin. It's not the straps of the Tefillin. Chachas Yitzur is hanging up von dem Kesher shel Tefillin und seinen länger over Meila Afinu Ma'achayrav, even though the straps of the Tefillin extend out of the knot of the Tefillin, and maybe they're easier to see from the back because they're longer. Zetman say Meridem Kesher, maybe easier to spot than the knot itself. Zetas bepashas by Odom Lamata. Look at the person next time you're in shul. As a Kesher von Rosh, Ken Amol Zayin Fadek mit the Yarmulke. It's possible for a person to have a large yarmulke on their head that covers the knot of the tefillin. That can get it hanging out up in the matter, whereas the straps of the tefillin extend low and you can see them. Why does Rashi emphasize that it's not the straps but it's the kesher? Because the element of tefillin that makes it similar to a crown is abhängig von dem kesher, is the part of the tefillin linked to the knot. Was tut, fast die Ritzus hat Tefillin sollen sich halten und sollen sein Mehudokei von Rosh, because the purpose of the knot is to keep the Tefillin shel Rosh in place in the position of the crown on a person's head. That's what Rashi wanted to explain. That's what he wanted to illustrate. What does it teach us? Let's understand things from a spiritual perspective. Because what Moshe requested and was granted to some extent, that I should see your glory and beauty, at the very least he's going to see, so to speak, the back. When is this playing out? Rashi tells us when the Eibishter is giving the impression of being a chazan who is davening. Hat ihm gelernt, wenn der Eibishter hat ihm gelernt, dass sei der Tefillin von Amiris gegeben mit das Rachamim. It's the time where the Eibishter is teaching Moshe one of the most powerful tefillahs that we have, the 13 Midas Rachamim. So it's sicher nicht ein Indian study. It's obviously not just a sidebar. The main thing is teaching you this formula that you should use to invoke divine compassion in the most difficult times. And by the way, there's also a Kesher shel Tefillin. No. As beim Lernen Moshe dem Seder b'Kosher Rachamim hat der Eibishter ihm gelassen sein G'foide Yisbarach v'Vchinas Achorei. The fact that during this lesson about how to daven, the Eibishter is exposing his, so to speak, glory, is not accidental. This is a critical part of how we ask Hashem for mercy. In order that the lesson of how to invoke Hashem's compassion should be complete, Moshe, representing the Jewish people, has to see the Eibishter's tefillin knot. What does that mean? So to understand the significance of the tefillin knot in this whole davening process, to be able to invoke divine mercy, so let's understand the tefillah that is described over here as an oifen v'aseroye oisi mi'utav, that the Eibishter says, you're going to see me like the chazan who is wrapped in a talis, reading the Yud Gimel Midas. Something here doesn't automatically make sense. Surely the main part of the davening is the words that you say when you invoke Hashem's elements of compassion. That's what's going to cause the Eibishter to show us grace and to show us compassion. Why is it important to know that those words will be said while the chazan is wrapped in a talis? Why is wrapped in a talis relevant? So we have to understand what's going on over here. We're talking about compassion to lead to forgiveness, and the reason we need the compassion and the forgiveness must be because we did something that was wrong. What happens when a person does something wrong? The principle of sin, and because the person has sinned, that's why the person is petitioning Hashem and asking mercy, that we should be forgiven. The only reason people do Averis is because they forget the context, who I am, what I'm about, how life works. Generally speaking, in Jewish spirituality, we say that the concept of forgetfulness is linked to klipa. That's why certain behaviors cause kasher l'shicha, that cause a person to forget what they're learning. But like we say in the davening Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we say when you're close to the Eibishter, there's no forgetting. What does it mean, forgetting? Let's understand who we are and understand what happens to us when we misbehave. Jews are hardwired to faith in God. And we all believe absolutely that the Eibishter created every single atom of existence. Not once upon a time, but when the Eibishter is mechadish b'tuvay bechol yoim tamid ma'aseh v'reishis, the Eibishter recreates every iota of existence at every single moment. Yed der tog und yed der rega, every day and every moment within the day is Hashem Yisborach mechadish von dosnai, the ganze bria. The Eibishter completely recreates everything. Miyayim v'efes ha'muchlot mamish, from absolute nothingness into existence. As the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, that in the nanosecond before the Eibishter recreates the world, it's as if there never was a world. The obvious question is, we believe all of this. As in the Rege is if we were sensitized to the fact that right now, in this very moment, I am being created by Hashem from scratch, from non-existence. Und als in der Rega Arum darf weiter ankommen zu Dvarvai, zum Mechadish sein, sein Metzias mir ein Liesh. And in a moment from now, I'm going to need that same input from the Eibishter to recreate me again from nothing. It has possible that the Jew who has that consciousness, sein der Kafir Chasron, the Grester Baltaiba, with all of the temptation and hedonism in the world, soll nicht ausfolgen dem Rotzen von Eibishter nicht zum Malle sein, Taiva sein? How's it possible that I'm not going to do what the Eibishter wants? I know that my entire existence, not just my life, my entire existence is completely contingent on the Eibishter injecting me with life right now. How do I, in that moment, go against the Eibishter? Was von ihm, Baruch Hu, hängt ab sein ganzer Metzius zusammen mit sein Taiva in der Rega Mamish. When a person realizes, I exist, the thing that I have, this passion and temptation for only exists in this moment because the Eibishter is making it. And why do you think the Eibishter made it? To trip me up? Maybe the person says, well, because I have so many distractions and obstacles and personal foibles that totally get in the way of me serving the Eibishter. Okay. Weißt du doch, als Samayim b'mayim, mit der ganzen Sicherheit, the person could know with absolute clarity, als durch die Sachen, was Stellen seinen hat erst beschaffen geworden durch den Eibishter Mayin Nefesh HaMuchal Mamish. That obstacle, that personality trait, that personal failing is also being created by the Eibishter right now from scratch. K'moi lifnei sheishis meibreishis mamish, as if it never existed. So therefore, logically, it is impossible that anything, whether it is a weakness in my character or whether it is a distraction or temptation in the world, cannot truly get in the way of what the Eibishter wants, because the Eibishter is making it right now from fresh. So how could they be in any way an obstacle to Yiddishkeit? So then was the Eibishter will? How could something that the Eibishter is making be an interference to what the Eibishter wants? It doesn't make any sense to say this item, this personality trait, this temptation, this distraction, this laziness is right now being created by Hashem, and yet is not going to fulfill what the Eibishter wants. Okay, if that's the case, wie kommt das, als soll sich gefunden Eid, was fühlt sich auf anders wie das, was eine Idee, Brura, is im Mechayev? How can there ever be a Jewish person who behaves differently to what his rational mind clearly understands should be the case? As then for them, the answer is, he knows it. Aber beis meise, hat dem vergessen. But he forgets in the moment. And we all have this experience. In the heat of the moment, we forget context, we forget perspective, we forget the truth. If we had focused memory at all times, naturally any abstraction to our progress, to our connection to Hashem, would dissolve. And we'd fulfill Torah mitzvahs perfectly. Not only Torah mitzvahs, but every action that we did would be directed to Hashem. We would recognize and acknowledge Hashem in every single thing we did. We'd have no inappropriate or distracting thoughts. If we remembered, but we forget. That's why the whole context of asking Hashem for compassion has to be in a talis. And not only a talis, but Rashi points out tefillin too. Because both a talis and tefillin were given to us as mitzvahs to help keep our memories fresh. You look at your tzitzis, it reminds you what you're supposed to do. You wear tefillin, why? As a reminder between your eyes. On der Fall is in get zum ticken vakir. That's why these are two key components to help a person fix and uproot averis, was bringt bechanoisi und virchamte, to bring about the Eibishter's divine compassion for us. So talis and tefillin fix forgetfulness, which is detachment from the Eibishter, and therefore obviously elicit the Eibishter's compassion to us. Within tefillin gufa, the knot plays a special role. Now we understand why Rashi tells us that not only did the Eibishter show Moshe his, so to speak, tefillin, but the knot, kesher dafka, why that is so integral to this process of how we elicit Hashem's compassion. In Zohar von Heinrich Keseder, the Zohar in this week's parasha, Zokter as Rabbi Rabbi Yossi haben gemacht kishorim, tells us that Rabbi Yossi used to tie knots, so they would not forget the Torah thoughts that they learned. In the other more contemporary works that say this is the Torah's source, so then was that people say as machen a knippel is an nicht zu vergessen a Sach, was man will vergedenken. That if you make up like a little pinch or a little twist in a piece of material or whatever it is, it will help you not to forget what you've learned. What's it got to do with anything? What's the connection between a knot and memory? So again, the Alter Rebbe in Tanya in Geras HaTshuva tells us in the Pirush Raimei Chazal, commenting on what the Gemara says, that if a person did an Aver Chas v'Shalom, what should the person do in order to sustain and survive spiritually and of course physically? The person should double their efforts. So if they were used to learning a single page of Torah on a daily basis, they should double it, etc. Says the Alter Rebbe, why? Why do you double? It's like if you have a rope that snaps, and now you have to tie it at the point where it snapped. Turns out that the place that was the weakest part of the rope is now the strongest part, because that's where the knot is. So what is a knot in spiritual terms? It represents where we rebind ourselves to something meaningful and important and spiritual with extra strength. Bis the Tzunuf point is in an Eifen von Koffel und Mechupel, to the point that we now have a doubled and redoubled strength in a place that was previously weakness. On the Faris Osatikin of Chatoim, that's why it is the means to atone or fix Averis. Because when we really tie ourselves hard, tightly to our values, to our Torah, in an Eifen von Kesher, then we're so bound we can't forget, we don't lose sight, and we don't do the wrong things. So the spiritual knot, which the Eibush is showing Moshe Rabbeinu, the knot of his tefillin, which has the power to undermine the forces of Klippa that would rip us away from Hashem. That translates and evolves into something tangible and physical. As Machanach Klippa Gashmi helps to Mavatas and Shicha Kipshut, that if you make your little knot or your pinch or your twist, it's going to help you not to forget things, because that's how it works spiritually, so that's how it works in the physical world too. And that closes the circle for us, why the knot of tefillin that the Eibishter shows to Moshe is so integral to this process of how you ask Hashem for compassion. When the Eibishter is teaching Moshe the procedures that you follow in order to be able to get Rachamim to cleanse Averis, so what does the Eibishter show Moshe? A symbol of what the process is in order to fix Averis. The knot of tefillin. A very firm connection, the knot of tefillin, the kedusha, the knot of connection to holiness, and binding ourselves to the absolute clarity that every single thing, not only ourselves, but every component of our lives, is being regenerated by the Eibishter from scratch at every moment. So if we take those steps to prevent ourselves from forgetting what we should always be focused on. By ensuring that we are totally and consistently conscious of things of holiness and kedusha, that will speed up the fulfillment of the prophecy that the Eibusher will be revealed to the extent that the human flesh is able, the eyes, physical human eyes, are able to see Hashem's word. We won't need to remember that this is the truth. Because we'll see it clearly. We'll see the regeneration of existence at every moment from literal nothingness. And that will happen with the coming of Mashiach. May you redeem and take us upright to Eretz Yisrael b'mheirav yameinu mamash immediately.